All right. It's weird that I'm seeing you, Rochelle, and not the speaker. Just don't know if everyone else is watching you instead of us, but in the meantime, we'll just get going. I do just want to walk. I'm Amanda Lassard. I'm the planning director for the town of Windham. Thanks for being here tonight for our second community meeting for the East Windham Conservation Project. Well, I battle with technology. Give me a second. Too far. All right. So I also have with me Linda Brooks, the Parks and Rec Director, and on Zoom, Rochelle Apps, the Executive Director of the Presumpscot Regional Land Trust. And then later in the meeting, you'll be hearing from Aceto Landscape Architects, who we hired to draft the concept plan based on the feedback that we've heard from the public on this project. So we will give a brief overview of the project, but really before we get going, I did want to just ask people to help us gauge how quickly we can go through kind of this first part of the project overview. For the people on Zoom, there's a poll, but for the people in the audience, we will just ask you to raise your hand. Like, how have you already engaged with us on this project? Did anyone here attend the February community meeting? 3 people here. Did you attend either of the site walks we had in April or May? A couple people here. Did you look at the virtual map tour that was on the Land Trust website? Great, most of the people in here. And did you complete the survey that we had open for bid?
Oh, I did.
Most of the people here as well. We'll give maybe another 10 seconds for the folks online to just answer any of these you may have attended. Seems like the majority of the folks are going to end the poll and share the results. That's really tiny for everyone there. Now I can't read it because it's far away. But most people took the survey. And a number attended or took the virtual map tour. That's that great. About half the people. So that's great. At least you're familiar with the site. So we will just quickly kind of go through the presentation that you may have seen before if you were at the February meeting. It's just a good overview for those that haven't been here before though, but this is a project that's in collaboration with the town and the Land Trust because this is a really huge project, not only for the town of Windham, but for the region. This is the largest conservation and outdoor recreation project in Windham and the region. If you combine this project, which is about a little more than 650 acres with the abutting Lowell Preserve, that's 308 acres. It's as large as Bradbury Mountain State Park. So the partnership allows the town to own the land and the Land Trust to hold a conservation easement to help us with stewardship, trail maintenance, and to conserve the property and make sure that it's never developed in the future. So we'll the kind of highlights of the project, you see it highlighted here in yellow, that it does connect over 1,000 acres of abutting property through the Lowell Preserve and open space in Falmouth. It has 1,500 feet of frontage on Little Duck Pond. It contains Atherton Hill, the tallest hill in Windham. It connect trails not only through the abutting conserved property, but also a regional network for snowmobile and ATV trails in the CMP corridor that bisects the property. And there's a number of other conservation, recreation, and educational opportunities that we'll touch on briefly. So overview of the project, we did want to point out kind of a few key elements, that there is this existing woods road that kind of goes through the property. The landowner had recently logged the property. So when we talk about trail systems, this we're envisioning as kind of the backbone of a trail system through the property. This woods road, there's a little crosshatch piece of land down near Falmouth Road, which would be the principal trailhead access that The landowner actually has a easement that they're going to grant to the Portland Water District to build a new water tank. So there'll be some shared access at the beginning, but that does kind of provide an opportunity to co-locate vehicle access to the property. And then there's several areas of kind of natural scenic views, like a couple places you can see the White Mountains. There's beautiful views on Little Duck Pond. There's an overlook of the Western Mountains. And as you get to Atherton Hill, there's no view there currently, but there used to be a fire tower there that gave you 360-degree views, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Oh, and you see the CMP corridor bisecting it with that existing snowmobile and ATV trail that connects to Gray. And there's an existing snowmobile trail that crosses the property and connects through Lowell. So the reason we're doing this project and it's important to town is really something that came out of our comprehensive plan that we adopted in 2017. One of the big goals was to keep rural Windham rural. And one of those strategies to make that goal happen was to develop an open space and recreation plan. And really the need for that was driven by the fact that Windham's been growing so rapidly, really since the 70s. Our population has tripled, I think, since then. We're one of the top 10 fastest growing towns in Maine. And we've been seeing a lot of growth happen in our rural areas. 7 out of 10 homes have been in our rural areas where the community has said we should not have development, that we should be protecting it from development. We've issued a lot of new homes in the last, most recently, 150 dwelling units in every year in the last 3 years. And really the growth pressure is significant. So if this property was not conserved, it could otherwise be developed with 350 new homes. So the property itself, though, is important for rural Windham because it was identified in our open space plan that we adopted in 2021 as a rural character preservation zone. It was an area that we described in East Windham as being a focus for large scale conservation. Both for its large block of unfragmented habitat and its sense of rural character and function. You see its connectivity to Lowell. Another reason is that in our open space plan, we wanted to enhance protections for surface waters and wetlands, especially in watersheds most at risk from new development. This property is located in the Little Duck Pond, Highland Lake, and Forest Lake watersheds, which are all designated by DEP as lakes most at risk from new development. Also in the Pleasant River watershed. All of this area would protect water that flows into the Presumpscot River and eventually to Tasco Bay. So kind of the brief overview of the project budget, because we always have lots of questions about that. We do anticipate that the project will be about $3.6 million based on the amenities that we're envisioning for the property. And we have 3 main funding sources, grants from state and federal sources. We have excellent news to share on the state grant funding. The Land for Maine's Future program has awarded this project $998,000. Yeah, it was nearly what we requested, the $1 million, but I mean, this is really significant in that of the projects that were in this round of funding, we had the top scoring project. I think it really demonstrates that there is really the development pressure is significant, and conserving land is both, the local priority, a regional priority, and the state is saying it's a priority. The federal funding component is a grant application that is due on July 1st. That's up to $500,000. The municipal portion is going to be for a bond that we're going to put in front of the town meeting on June 18th, asking for up to $1.8 million to match that state grant funding. We are anticipating to be able to pay that bond back from open space impact fees, so there wouldn't be any impact on the tax rate to purchase this property and improve it to this project budget. And finally, private donation would make up the rest of the funding source. And we'll talk a bit more about the schedule for kind of fundraising efforts through the summer. This picture here is kind of walking up this existing wood road, and you can see the White Cap, Washington in the distance. And this is just about a third of a mile up from Falmouth Road. So there's lots of opportunities for scenic views. We need community involvement to kind of both help us with the grant funding applications to create a vision for this property. We've had two main efforts happening for community involvement. We've got a steering committee that was made up of representatives of education, recreation, economic development, all helping us guide the community engagement process. We've had two community meetings. This is our second. We had that townwide survey, the sidewalk opportunities, and the virtual map tour. Thank you so much for everyone that has participated in helping us, because this involvement is really key in kind of creating this vision for the property that identifies these conservation values that are most important to protect and determines the permitted and prohibited uses that are envisioned on the property. So we've drafted this concept plan based on what we've heard from the public that the vision for the property is. The second component, the community involvement, will be used to draft a management plan. It's kind of a detailed program for monitoring the property, maintaining the boundaries, developing and maintaining a trail system. We'll be working on that with other stakeholders over the next 6 months. So finally, the project timeline, and we started working on the community involvement in January. Here we are in the end of May. We have been awarded that Land for Maine's future funding. June is the town meeting to seek the bond for support funds. We'll be applying for federal grant funding in July. Private fundraising campaign will happen in the summer. We hope we can close on the property and finalize the management plan in the fall and have a kind of grand opening of the project in the spring. Certainly once the project is owned by the town, it will be open to the public, but there won't be anything built on it yet. It would just be as it is today. And I'm going to turn it over to Rochelle to talk about the conservation values of the property.
Great. Amanda, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So this project is an incredible collaboration between our land trust, the Presumpscot Regional Land Trust, and the town of Windham. So I'm the executive director. We have had the opportunity to do a great project with the town of Windham last year, the Lowell Preserve project, which is the adjacent land on this map, just to the southeast of the current project. And now we have the opportunity to do an exponentially bigger project. And so this project is significant in a conservation scale for many reasons. One is, you can see on this map, it's the largest area of undeveloped forest land, not only in Windham, but if we zoomed out, in all of Greater Portland. So this is an unbelievable opportunity to conserve a parcel of land that is within an area that's over 1,500 acres of undeveloped forested land, which doesn't exist in this area anymore. This is a really big deal. Having this land connect to the corridor going southeast through Lowell Preserve and then through Falmouth provides a wildlife corridor that you don't have, again, anywhere else in this region. It connects Lowell Preserve to North Falmouth Community Forest to Blackstrap Hill Preserve. And this corridor together is larger, and actually just Lowell and East Windham together is larger than any state park in all of southern Maine, to give you a sense of what a big and important project this is regionally. Maybe if you want to go to the next slide. So conservation highlights. This is all forested. Amanda mentioned it's been recently selectively harvested. So it's still fully forested. There's 38 acres of wetlands. There's headland streams. There's over 1,500 feet of frontage on Little Duck Pond, virtually the whole northern shoreline, and that is all undeveloped and will stay undeveloped. And there's 150 acres of deer wintering yard in the northeast corner. That's the black and white lines. Atherton Hill is also the highest point in Windham, which you can see, that's that orange mark. The purple also are all wild brook trout spawning streams.
Lost my mouse. There we go.
All right, so
Oh, there we go.
can you go back once? There you go, great.
That-
So water quality, as Amanda mentioned, Windham has impaired streams, including the Pleasant River, and state threatened water bodies, including Forest Lake, Highland Lake, and Little Duck Pond. That's all of the headland waters. The headland waters for all 4 of those are this area, and that will ensure that these areas stay in the best condition, water quality wise, possible. There's nothing better for these headwaters than for this land to be conserved. So conserving these is a really big deal because of the size and the scale of the parcel for water quality. Amanda, if you want to move ahead to the next. Great. So this project is important for Windham, and it's also important for the region. The state of Maine, 20% of the land is conserved. Greater Portland, it's 8%, and Windham, it's 4%. This project will meaningfully increase conserved land that provides access to the public for a wide variety of recreational opportunities. And conserving this land is the only way to ensure it's going to stay rural and going to stay undeveloped for the public into the future. I think at this point, do I hand it on to Linda? Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's fine. I was here to talk about the recreational benefits of this property, which there are many, and we're really excited about that. As Amanda already mentioned, it is directly aligned with our open space goals to connect and expand both outdoor conservation opportunities and recreation. So right out of the chute, it's great to know that you're meeting some of the goals that you've established for yourself. And Rochelle has mentioned again about this connection and this creation of the outdoor recreation corridor. We would just want to bring to your attention that throughout the corridor, there are many activities that can happen everywhere. And then there's some specific activities that will only happen in certain sections of the corridor. So that really seems to meet a lot of people's needs, where they may want to have hunting, they may want to have motorized vehicles. Those will happen in specific areas, but yet then there's walking and hiking and snowshoeing and that kind of thing throughout many aspects of the corridor. And it's just great to see, you know, we always want to establish further trail networks, and this is really accomplishing quite a bit. Okay. The other thing that we really have focused on and come to focus on in the world of parks and recreation is the health and wellness benefits. The National Recreation and Park Association has provided these statistics here, that 73% of adults believe that parks, trails, and open space are an essential part of our healthcare system. And they've also come to realize that anybody who uses parks and open spaces are 3 times more likely to achieve those physical fitness standards that we're looking for. So we just, you know, this is another asset to the community that is far beyond what you may think of when you just think of traditional recreation. Yes, that's not working. No. The other thing that we've come to really value is the benefits of nature. And it's been shown, it's proven to enhance nature, just being out in it is proven to enhance children's growth and development, their cognitive abilities, their creativity, problem-solving skills, and really just helping them reduce their stress. So we like to get them outside playing in this natural environment as much as possible. There you go.
Just point it.
So Amanda has mentioned the existing Woods Road. We want to show you before we move on into the concept plan that's going to be shown. The existing Woods Road is suitable for hiking, cycling, cross-country skiing right now. Like when we were to obtain it and own it, that's something that could be happening. But it's also could be upgraded to universal access trail standards so that it would make it more available for people of all ages and abilities. The narrow forested trails that currently exist on the property, and this one happens to go down to Little Duck Pond, that's very suitable for hiking, mountain biking, snowshoeing. Access to the Little Duck Pond allows for fishing, picnicking, and then enjoying scenic views, which we had come to learn through the survey is really important to many people with this property. This was the Western Mountain Scenic Overlook that Amanda had previously mentioned.
Is that overlook going to be actually preserved as an overlook? So when I was looking on the digital, or it looked like that was right at the quarry, which was going to be reforested.
Yep, we're gonna talk about that
Yeah,
on
we'll
the
talk
concept
about that
plan.
in the concept.
Okay, so
Yes. This is the observation tower that Amanda had already mentioned. The one on the right was the tower that was taken down in 2000. The one on the left is just an example of one that was refurbished in Western Maine. And this is kind of the notion that we would have in mind, this possible observation tower. And there would be that spectacular 360-degree view from what would be the only observation tower atop one of the highest points in the greater Portland area. So we just can't keep driving that point home enough. And we also wanted to just point out, of course, that this property offers many educational opportunities. We were happy to have our SU 14 be involved in the steering committee as well. But the land that this property involves offers many hands-on experiential learning opportunities, such as a pond, streams, wetlands, numerous types of exposed rock, an extensive undeveloped forest corridor, and significant elevation change for learning about climate resilience and the diverse wildlife habitat. So there's just so many opportunities for our local students. So the only thing, for those of you who hadn't had the opportunity, it's great. You can see the full survey results posted on the project website. We had 902 responses to the survey, so that was great. We were so pleased with that. 45% of those were Windham residents, and then the remaining were from the greater Portland area. So definitely there's a lot of interest region-wide. 36% of those were households with children under the age of 18. So that's our assumption is families, and there's a strong family desire to be involved in with this project. The other things that stood out were that the top ranked community benefit was to conserve the land. And the second highest ranked community benefit was to provide multiple use outdoor recreation opportunities. So that was very resounding and helps us guide this process further. And another very important part was that the top 4 high ranked activities were walking, hiking, visiting the observation tower, and and then experiencing the scenic views. So that is what came out when we asked folks to rank those, what will bring them to the property. So we have, as Amanda mentioned, we provided all of this information to Aceto Landscape Architects, and Nick and Trilby are here with us tonight, and they're going to be able to take this to the next step and show you what we've come up with for a concept plan.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. This is Nick Aceto with Aceto Landscape Architects. With me tonight is Trilby Smith. We're a Portland-based design studio. We worked on the Windham Open Space Master Plan that you may have noticed some of the graphics that Amanda had in her slides. Those are from our plans from about a year ago. And we've been working on this project for about 4 to 6 weeks, working with the steering committee and land trust and town staff to really our role has been to kind of help guide decision making at a very high level in terms of the master plan and programming the space. we understand this is a extremely important, property for the town and the region. And as an avid mountain biker, I use the trails connecting in from North Falmouth and Lowell Preserve, and just a beautiful property. And we did spend some time on site. The next few slides, I'm going to hand it over here to Trilby in just a moment, but we have about a dozen slides. And a lot of these, again, are just thinking from a very high level, how the space could be used and programmed, and helping provide some visuals to describe those uses. So I'm going to hand it over to Trilby, and Trilby's going to walk through the graphics and give you an overview of our work. And then we'll be happy to go back to each slide, answer questions, and look at the concepts. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Nick. Hi, everyone. My name's Trilby, and just wanted to say thank you all for your time, and we're looking forward to sharing our conceptual design presentation with you all. So we'll just get started. So we just got a great overview of some of the site context and the history of the site, and just we wanted to show context map and just really drive home the fact of how important this site is for the continued trail network connection and open space connections with Lowell Preserve and the community trails and beyond. So we're just going to do a brief overview of site inventory and analysis, and zooming into the site. And we've already gone over some of this information, but just want to make sure that we really show some of the importance of this information and some of how it's driven our design goals. So Woods Road, again, we want to point that out, and where it sits on the site and how it takes you about 3/4 in to the site, and the access point from Falmouth Road, as well as some of these high points that we find are very important for our view sheds. Mount Washington, the view of Mount Washington from this first elevation point are great, and then going over to the quarry and the views of the Western Mountains. And then Atherton Hill, which we have represented with a dotted line because of the obstructed views and the absence of the fire tower at this point. But the future of the observation tower, we're going to have 360-degree views from this this portion of the site, as well as some of the existing trail and access points to the snowmobile trail that runs through the site and connects to the existing utility corridor, and then Lowell Preserve and the existing trails just south of where we are. And then, of course, some of the wetland areas and sensitive habitat areas, as well as deer overwintering, which is represented by pink and the teal or the wetlands. So we took this site analysis and started looking at the existing elevations, and really want to show some of these high points being the red areas are higher elevations, and then the blue is representing some of the lower elevations on site. But also with talking about Woods Road, we did a slope analysis of the existing road and how accessible it is at this point, which we've represented with different gradients of color. So purple being the steepest areas, about over 20% grade, and green being the flatter areas, 0 to 2%. So with that, understanding that how accessible or lack of accessibility there is with the road, but it's this great opportunity for a central spine and trail connections to use for. So now we're going to move on to our concept plan and alternatives. And I just want to be sure to say that we're representing the concept plan with a diagram, and these aren't like set in stone illustrative site plans, but just overall view, again, showing this the importance of the connections to Lowell Preserve and the North Falmouth Community Trails. And we'll zoom into the site to give you a better view of our site diagram. So we are using, so we have identified active open space zones and passive open space zones, and some of the recreational uses that are going to go with it. So the active open space zones being used for the multi-use trails, and the passive open space zones being sensitive to some of the wildlife habitat. And this would be more for our hunting and wildlife observation areas. Also want to point out the connection to Falmouth Road and the access point to the site. We've represented that with this white line. The white line's on the map. And then we've also to point out this magenta dotted line that runs from the access point to the site up to Atherton Hill, which is we have representing the accessible trail. And then this gray line is representing the access road. And we heard from Amanda earlier about the proposed water tanks, and then extending this access road that the water department will be building, and having a seasonal access road to a seasonal parking lot, which is represented by the purple P, and the year-round parking lot being represented by the blue P. The observation tower being represented up on Atherton Hill. We've also identified 3 scenic overlook areas, and the woods trail being represented by this dotted green line, and then a vehicle or motorized access trail, which would be strictly for snowmobiles and ATVs, would be separate from the accessible trail. So the accessible trail would just be pedestrian and foot traffic and bikes only. And then we've also identified a few different destinations with different programming elements, and I will walk through those. So starting with the letter A, that is representing a welcome kiosk and trailhead. And the letter B represents Mount Washington overlook and picnic area. And letter C is representing the scenic pond views, as well as an outdoor classroom space, natural play space, and another picnic area. And D, having a designated fishing spot to hike into. And F, representing the Western Mountain Overlook and picnic area. And G, finally representing Atherton Hill and the observation tower and a picnic area to go along with that destination. So now we'll walk through some site photos that will show existing, and then what we're proposing for renderings of some of these destinations. So starting with the existing conditions of the access road, the Woods Road, and we are proposing a accessible trail, and this is kind of the character that we would like to show you, with wide trail, multi-use access. Again, this is not vehicle access; it's foot traffic and bikers only. The trail would be regraded, and would have a change in material for easy accessibility, as well as opportunities for interpretive signage along the way, and wayfinding, as well as site maps to help you understand where you are and locate where you'd like to go, and technical trail connections along the way. The existing pond access, these are the conditions around Little Duck Pond. And the proposed pond area, we are envisioning a outdoor classroom and scenic overlook interpretive signage along the pond, trails that will connect you down to Lowell Preserve, the designated fishing area, as well as benches to sit on and relax and take in the pond views. And some of the existing woods trail, forested woods trail, we saw some photos of earlier as well. And the proposed woods trail that we see this would be for some of the technical connections with mountain biking, being able to hike, and trail running, signage along the way for educational purposes, as well as more wayfinding along your ride. And so here's our existing scenic overlook, and you can see the quarry just beyond, but this view of the Western Mountains is amazing up here. And we are proposing, some wayfinding, some peak finder to help you locate what you're looking at. Again, more seating and more accessibility so that everyone can have access to these wonderful views of the Western Mountains and beyond. And so here we are at Atherton Hill and the existing conditions. And you can see the remnants of the former fire tower that was here and the vegetation that's grown up and obstructed some of those views out towards the mountains. So it proposed observation tower with 360-degree views of Casco Bay and the Western Mountains, picnic areas and seating, and also opportunities for some historical signage to help us tell the story of what Atherton Hill is and the fire tower that was once here. So Amanda was talking earlier about budgeting, and so we've, because we're adhering to a budget, we've identified 3 priority program elements that we feel that need to be built out separately, and we'd like to hear back from you on what you would like to prioritize, but we've come up with some different schemes on how we can meet these goals. So the 3 priority areas, the big items are the seasonal access road that would connect you to a seasonal parking lot, an accessible trail that would take you from the year-round parking lot all the way up to Atherton Hill and the observation tower. So this would be Woods Road, and it would be converted to be completely an accessible trail. And the last big item being the observation tower on top of Atherton Hill. We also wanted to point out that no matter what, there are some base amenities that will be built on this site and will be prioritized on the site, and that is 1 year-round parking lot, multi-use trails for recreation, as well as access to fishing, hunting, wildlife observation. So the next 3 slides that we're going to show you prioritize how we would build out the site and hope to get your feedback on what you would prefer for these big elements. So this first priority we're looking at is prioritizing parking and seasonal access road. So like we talked about before, this would still include the base amenities of a year-round parking lot, multi-use trails, and access to fishing and wildlife observation areas. But it would not have an accessible trail. Woods Road would remain as it is, and there would not be an observation tower. But you would have seasonal parking and a seasonal access road to get to that seasonal parking lot. And next priority, prioritizing the accessible trail. Again, your base amenities would be included in this scheme, and we would have a fully built accessible trail from the year-round parking lot and bringing you up to Atherton Hill. This would not include a seasonal parking lot or seasonal access road, and we would not have the observation tower at this time, but you would have this fully built out accessible trail. And then the final priority being prioritizing the observation tower. So fully built out observation tower. With that, Woods Road would remain as it is. And there would be 1 year-round parking lot, which is in the base amenities, of course, but there would not be a seasonal parking lot or a seasonal access road. But of course, the multi-use trails would also be here, and access for fishing, hunting, and wildlife observation. And so that concludes our portion of the conceptual design presentation. And just want to say that Nick and I feel honored to be able to work on this project, and thanks for your time and attention. We look forward to hearing back from you all. So I'll hand it back off to Amanda. Thank you.
Thanks, Trilby. So I think the next thing we had on our agenda, though, is just is a Q and A, and I get chat box up that I can just. Yeah.
Would you like me to keep this screen up, Amanda?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. I think for the folks in the room, all of them are on the wall over there. Certainly if you need a closer look at it. And for the folks, I think I can. I'm gonna share a link in the chat box that has the PDF of this overall concept plan and those three different priorities, just so you can follow the link and see them more closely. But we want to take this opportunity to kind of answer any questions you might have about the property or the concept plans. And before we ask you some specific questions about them. So I'm gonna just start in the room here with someone that's here in the back.
Hi, I'm Sue Hawes. I live in Portland. Is parking a problem there? I haven't been to the spot, so
There's no parking off-site, off-street parking yet available. So I think part of the task here is saying that, well, one, we want to provide off-street parking because we think that this property will be popular. As part of, we'll be working with the Bureau and Parks and Lands as our state agency sponsor for Land for Maine's future funding to talk about how we should right size our parking lots based on who we anticipate the number of visitors might be. But that's, part of, we think, the need for both a year-round parking lot and a seasonal parking lot, that this would get more use in those kind of summer, spring and fall months. But we know we need to provide street parking, and that number is not yet determined, but we don't want it to be a problem. And I think working with the land trust too is, like they have several preserves, and so does the town, kind of understanding that to provide the service to people, we need to provide adequate parking. That I can.
Yep.
When you
Nikki?
say seasonal parking, so you're just saying like when the snow flies, it's closed?
Yes.
Okay.
So can you hear the questions in the audience? Rochelle?
Oh, yes, that was
Okay.
clear.
Okay.
How far is the seasonal parking lot in? I mean, how close is it to the lake? Is it a ways away from the lake?
I don't, Nick or Trilby, do you want to?
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's probably an eighth of a mile, I'd say. It's maybe a 3 to 5 minute walk. It's not far.
So for those of you, well, I mean, I think it's a little bit more than that. I would say it's like half a mile.
I can answer. I've seen where they.
Yeah, it's the area on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
For those that went on the sidewalk, it was kind of the first lay down area that we got to, like after we kind of got up a pretty steep part before it went down again.
So
very
when
quick question.
when I tracked it on my watch, when I was there last, it's about a half a mile from Falmouth Road to where the seasonal parking could be, and then about a third of a mile from there down to following the trail, not direct line, but following the trail, the pink to the white. That would be about a third of a mile.
Just a very quick question. I know, first of all, this plan is amazing. I think we're all super excited about it. The fact that parking was the very first question that was asked probably is indicative. It's always parking, right? And I think the seasonal parking lot, hopefully we can have more discussions. This is really exciting. I think having this parking lot, I've never been to a conservation area where people needed to drive it at all. Can we not make a parking lot that's large enough down at the trailhead? There's plenty of undesirable property down there that should accommodate all the parking so that no cars are driving up into the land other than emergency vehicles, or maybe a bus or something that needs to bring school kids in at the most. Throwing that out there, we can move on. This is not being decided tonight, but as long as you hear some concerns about
Well, tell you,
cars driving into this place.
I'll tell you part of like the thought process around it is that this is the steepest part, that area between what's the year-round parking and the seasonal parking is one of the steepest parts of the site. So exactly for the access for those that, don't have the ability, and school buses. to provide better access into the site, but you know, it's another 2 miles to the rear of the property, so we heard that the top priority in the survey is conservation of and protection of water quality and wildlife habitat. So this plan is definitely trying to be mindful of that. Again, parking lot sizing and locations, understanding, trying to provide better access into the property is the balancing act.
It's just a drop off point then.
And the next activity after we finish the Q&A is actually for everybody to tell us their rank their highest to lowest priorities or phasing of these priorities. So that's a great place for you to add that feedback in our next activity. Amanda, when you're ready, I can read questions from the Q&A once you're finished with the questions from the room.
Yes, you have one more.
I just want to make a comment that my question about parking was directly related to having to choose among these 3 choices, because I want to go for the middle one. But if I do that and I don't, you know, parking's not sexy.
Well,
But it is, you know, something I'm gonna create demand, you know, to use the trail. But if there's no parking, then that's a problem. So I'm
But they can make the
debating.
parking big enough without having seasonal parking.
So right,
is all I'm
year-round parking at Falmouth Road
Will be.
will be provided from the get-go. The size of that parking area has yet to be determined. So the question to you is about a longer access road into the site with seasonal parking and
I see.
a second parking lot.
Okay, thank you.
I think to the question before about, and just to repeat it really, was the scenic overview above the quarry will be maintained. I think part of we didn't really talk about was the we had a lot of questions on the sidewalk about forest management and, you know, maintaining the forest for wildlife and for scenic views is going to be important and something that we want to commit to, maintaining the views from those certain destinations. I just answered a question no one asked.
I just had a question. Are people concerned about having that seasonal parking too close to Duck Pond Road?
Absolutely.
Is that what I get the sense that you guys
Absolutely.
are all concerned
Yep.
for because you're afraid it'll be too crowded up there in Little Duck Pond?
I mean,
Yes.
it gets crowded. We want people to be up there, but it's definitely a quiet spot. I mean,
Yeah.
this is gonna bring people, which is wonderful, but it's not just, I mean, it's also just having cars driving in there.
They can
It's
walk
meant-
in.
Yeah, it's a.
I'm
meant to
just
be a
thinking of
conservation
families with
area.
young kids. That's all I'm
Yeah.
thinking of, you know, that they would want
Well,
to
we
have.
hike in with our little kids to every park there is. You
Right.
walk in
And we
from a
did-
parking
we
lot at
always
the end,
have
you
with ours.
drive into it.
Right.
and then park.
Like if you want to drive in, you go to Raymond Beach, or you
Yeah.
go to Stable Lake State Park, or there are places you can drive in if you have little kids and you don't want to walk in.
I just want to make sure how many people, Amanda, are there in person? Because that was a question for folks on Zoom. We're
There's
wondering.
like 15 people here and 44 people on Zoom.
Yep, so I just want to make sure we get a chance for all 60 people to jump in with questions. So thank you to everyone in person, and we'll have more time for those for questions. And I think we're going to move to some questions from folks who are patiently waiting on Zoom. One question is, what is the walking distance from the year-round parking, which is A, or the P next to the A, right near Falmouth Road, to Atherton Hill? And that's 2 miles. And then another question is, are there plans to create future recreational opportunities outside of the initial concept plan? And the answer is, of course, yes. At this point, the concept plan is something that we think we could do most of this, possibly all of it, depending on how our funding sources pan out over the next few years. And then if more funding opportunities arise, there may be opportunities for more. Could seasonal parking open opportunity for carry-in boat launch for canoe and kayak? It would be a very, very long walk. There's a lot better options. Linda, do you want to talk about maybe better options for boating in Windham?
Yes, we do. This has come up quite a bit during the process. And if you attended the first community meeting. We had kayaking as a potential option. We've actually taken it away. The feedback that we received, and the hike in, as Rochelle referred to, there are other areas in Windham that the town owns and manages that is very suitable for kayaking and canoeing and that kind of thing. So we'd encourage folks to go to Dundee Park or to go to Chafin Pond when we're doing some kayaking opportunities, that kind of thing. So that's why we moved that as a feasible activity here.
Field too.
And gamble,
Yeah, the
correct.
results
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
Oh, can I
Alright.
just say one thing, Rochelle, as you're reading
Yeah.
questions? If people don't want to type out a question, you certainly can raise your hand and we will call on you in a bit. So you can ask your question verbally.
Great. And then what are the areas designated to allow horseback riding? So horseback riding will be allowed on that main wide trail. That is the Woods Road now because it has plenty of room for both horses and other folks. And it may make sense, and we will work with the horse community, horse riding community to identify if there's other trails that make sense for horses or not. But just to remind folks, the management plan in which that level of detail is really going to happen over the next 6 months. It hasn't happened yet. So that's a level of detail we haven't gotten to yet. There's a nice comment from one person that says, great plan. Thanks for all the hard work from so many people. We will plan to support this at town meeting. So thanks for that positive feedback. It's always nice to hear positive feedback. There's a question about if some of these amenities result in needing more parking, can we address that later? And of course, just like all parks and all open space projects, we will keep adjusting to make sure we find a balance of open space and access. And that is not always easy, but we will keep working on that. And then we have a question about there's a thank you for Aceto for putting these visuals together. So just want to make sure folks see that. What's the current timeline for PWD, Amanda?
They are in the process of designing their project. I think that they are hoping to start construction in the fall. That they'll have to go through planning board and different and DEP permitting for that amount of development and construction. So the public will hear more about it. It's gonna go to the planning board, but they should be making a submission soon.
What is the timeline for access trail from point A to point B? Point A to point B is exists for it's a woods road. The whole pink dotted line is a woods road. That's about half a mile from A to B. And if the land was public, which it's not, you could walk it now. Right now, this land is still private and not open to the public. But once it's owned by the town and we have a conservation easement on it, it will be open and you could walk that distance because there is a woods road there now. There's a question about hunting. So this land, like, so as a land trust, all lands that have a sufficient distance from houses allow hunting according to state and local regulations because it's a traditional activity and use of the land. And so the rules that apply in Windham will apply for this project. And just like many of our preserves throughout the 5 towns that we work in, there will be ample signage to let people know when they need to wear orange, when hunting is happening, because this project is very large and there's plenty of room for people to both hunt and for people to walk on the land. And that's why you'll see on this project there'll be significant areas without trails, both for wildlife and for areas that will ensure there's good spots for hunting. Amanda or Linda, do you want to add anything to that?
Other than that, you know, we part of the Land for Maine's future program is that we keep the land open for hunting. So that's part of like what we're signing up for in receiving that grant funds. And it's consistent with Windham's history, like there's hunting allowed in Lowell Preserve abutting this property.
Oh, and also there's hunting allowed by permission by the landowner now, and that this current area is used by many people for hunting now, and that will be a tradition that continues. We have hit most of the areas. There's a question about would hunting be limited to designated spaces? That's a level of detail we're not at yet. Again, that's in the management plan level, which will happen over the next 6 months. There's another question about will foraging be permitted on the land? Again, that's at the management plan level questions. There's a question about will there be restrooms? We have talked about potentially having toilets at the year-round parking area. We're not sure that we could affordably manage not just the installation, but the ongoing management of bathrooms at any other location. But if that does make sense, then potentially yes. Again, that it's getting in a level of detail that we're not at yet. And then there was a question, was the land heavily logged? No, the land was selectively logged. The landowner has a forest management plan, just like anyone who has their land in tree growth, and that needed to be followed, the management plan. So the land has been selectively logged in oversight by a licensed forester. That is most of what I'm seeing, Amanda.
I saw one around, is the road planned to seasonal parking also considered a trail? I think we're envisioning that those are separate. So the trail would be where the existing Woods Road is, so it would be separate from where vehicles would be driving. There was some questions about fundraising. I don't know if you saw those.
Let's see, let me,
maybe that had to do with how the different priorities impact fundraising, and how if we would consider extending fundraising into the future, you know, at a future date, if the priorities necessitated it. But I think we heard a couple questions on how do I get involved? How do we make this happen? I think fundraising.
Raise your hand at town meeting.
Yeah, for that.
there'll be a lot, there has been a lot of ways for people involved. There'll be a lot more ways coming. You know, there's, if you're a Windham Town resident, of course, going to town meeting and voting for the bond. But then there'll also be a public fundraising campaign over the summer. And then we'll start having volunteers possibly as early as this fall, but probably next spring, to start building out the trail system and engaged in the design of the educational material. There will be so many opportunities for people to be involved and engaged in this project, which is will be really fun and exciting. There's, I think, are you seeing anything else, Amanda?
No, but there's a few people with their hands raised. If you still want to ask a question, if you keep that hand up on the attendee list. Ray Monahan, you can unmute yourself and ask a question.
Oh, I don't have a question. I wrote it down.
Okay, thanks. So it looks like Michael Hanscom.
I'm mute. Am I on?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, this is Linda Hanscom. We're the camp owners. We have been for over 30 years at Little Duck Pond. Okay, this whole project, unfortunately, is a bit concerning because for one major reason is the point that seems to be made throughout this Zoom session is that this park, and we're going to have fishing, and we're going to have access to Little Duck Pond. And well, you know what? This pond is I don't know how many of these other preserves have landowners that actually have a dwelling or camp, a cottage, own land, and that seems to have gotten lost in this. Okay, we can't get lost in this, because we have rights to that. It's a very small pond. I personally, and many other people, landowners, do not think that that pond should be accessible for any fishing and any type of, if you want to do picnicking, you picnic, but don't advertise it, because there's going to be picnic tables, etc. that will just invite trouble. And I don't believe that is, I haven't frequented a lot of these other, we're in Westbrook, but we have the camp, like I said, in Windham on Little Duck Pond, which we've paid for, and it's been tough, and it is tough. So if people think that just because they can just come in and just do whatever they want and have access to the pond and access to this and that, they cannot, okay? Because we, as an association, a small association, we pay for the maintenance of that road. I know you're not going to use that road, at least not yet now. But there will be some issues with this, and where there doesn't seem to be, so far from this, that it seems to be such a positive outlook. Well, it's only positive for the people that, you know what, why don't you try having the cottage and paying for it and having some privacy and trying to do that for your life. Try it. This is not a public thing. This is not public. Presumpscot, I've been on their trails. There's no access to a pond. And why would you presume that you automatically, because you see the pond, that you can have access to it? No, you can't. And no, you shouldn't. In all honesty, you shouldn't. Or fishing. Okay, that's part of my speech. All right, responses?
Yeah, sure. So we did try to reach out to the property owners on Little Duck Pond prior to issuing our survey. We definitely are cognizant of your concerns. We want to be good neighbors. Part of this conversation that happened earlier in this room was about the boating access, about both that it's a concern about water quality contaminants, but also, you know, being noisy and being not a good neighbor by causing kind of excess use on the pond. I think the fishing we're envisioning is from the shoreline and from the trail connection to Lowell. I think we do want to be good neighbors. I don't know if Rochelle has some other examples of other properties where there are private properties, you know, abutting, you know, public lands like this, but certainly the access to the water in this regard for the public is to view it and picnic on it, not to be noisy or obtrusive on a very small water body that is where we are concerned about its water quality and the property owners that are on the pond.
Yeah, I would just add that we have gone out of our way to connect with Little Duck Pond resident owners and have had a special meeting with owners of properties along Little Duck Pond. We had, I think maybe 15 owners come to the meeting, give us a lot of feedback, which was really helpful. And as a result, we have made a lot of changes to accommodate that, this would be open to the public, and the priority of this whole project is to ensure clean water and to ensure open space for wildlife and to ensure people have access and to the 650 acres. The point isn't to make Little Duck Pond a destination. We've already done a lot of listening, and we will continue to listen to everyone, to neighbors, to people throughout Windham and people throughout the region, because like all of the 18 different public access preserves we have, all of which have access to water, whether it's a river, whether it's a lake. We are always listening to our neighbors, and we are always changing signage. We are changing how people engage with the land to ensure that the neighbors have a good working relationship with us. And so that's just an ongoing relationship, and it's something we'll keep working with everyone on.
Don't see any other questions on the Q&A. Is there anyone else in the room that has some questions, or otherwise we will kind of talk about the specific feedback we want from you on the concept plans? Okay. So I think Trilby, if you stop sharing that, I might try to figure out how to get this back up here. And I have too many. Over here. Sorry, move around things. All right. Did our Q&A. All right, so as was presented as kind of options for phasing, and I did share the link, and we're gonna, so we've allotted 15 minutes to this kind of these questions and answers. So we're gonna do kind of 5 minutes each, because this is gonna be happening concurrently and in the room, that you're gonna get a little activity in person and on Zoom, the Zoom question, and then I'm gonna have to mute it because the room will get loud. But let me see. So we have, oops, did I? Okay. That's actually not the first question. It's a trick. We'll come back to that, but I want to kind of find my. The first question is just what are your thoughts on the overall concept plan? I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and we just want you to let us know if we're on the right track. Are we missing something? Would you change something? So for the folks in the room, and if you have, and for the if there's something we're missing, just type it in the chat for the folks on Zoom that you want specific comments on the concept plan. I'm not going to mute it to talk to the folks in the room. You're going to have 5 minutes.
So just as a reminder, everyone who's on Zoom, if you if you put mostly right on track or somewhat or needs change, if you want to add suggestions into the chat or the Q&A, that would be great.
Oh, there's.
All right, you got 1 more minute.
It's right on the
Okay, I'm gonna end the poll if you guys can.
I think they're done.
You got, okay, go ahead, go to the second question.
I just lost my, page. I have too many things open.
Yeah, I guess.
Busy.
All right, so I'm gonna share the results with everyone that I think, the majority had said were mostly, right on. The next highest votes were, completely on track, and then we had some responses, 1 response each for somewhat, and these major changes. Did Linda want to tell us what the room
Yeah,
said?
the majority here were mostly right on with a couple people saying completely on.
Mostly right on and completely in the room. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Oops.
Overall for 30,000 foot view.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the next poll though, is, it'll take me a minute to explain. First I'll explain for the room, just because they're easy. You have 3 dots. Red means your first priority, yellow is your second priority. You do in the second phase, blue means you do in the third phase. So you get 1 of each and you put them on 1 of each of those drawings. For the people on Zoom, you're gonna see 3 questions all at the same time. They're referencing, they're referencing how you would phase the concept plan. And you need to,
She's in competition.
in the first phase, which one in the second phase, and which one in the third phase, so you should only vote for first on 1 of them, and so they each, you shouldn't choose 1 for each separate category. You'll have 5 minutes to think about this and look at the plans in more detail and the link that previously shared. And if you have questions about what's happening, if you type in the chat, hopefully Rochelle will read it and follow.
Amanda, it was hard to hear with the background noise. Can you repeat the directions without the background noise and also resend that link for people to review?
I think you would share the directions because I can't avoid the background noise.
Actually, I don't hear the background noise anymore from your side.
I just muted them.
Oh, you're right. Okay, so let me see if, it looks like folks are on track, but I'll just try and repeat what Amanda said. First, if Amanda shared the link earlier, and that link will let you see the large concept plan plus each of the priority plans, so you can review them on Zoom. The people in person get to look at all 4 simultaneously. So on Zoom, it's a little bit to make sure it's clear. Thanks, Amanda, for resending that link. What we want you to do is, these are 3 priorities that can be done in any order. And so what we're asking you is, what order do you want them to happen, knowing that we might run out of funding in the next year before we get to all 3 phases. And so phase 2 or 3 might be 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years out as we look for more funding. And so really we're asking you for each question, for question 1, choose 1, 2, or 3. Question 2, choose the number. If you chose 1 for question 1, choose 2 or 3 for question 2. And if you chose, for example, 2 for question 2, choose 3 for number 3, making sure you're just choosing 1, 2, and 3 one time for each question. That's the only way we'll get the best sense of what you would prioritize us doing first. The idea is we're doing all of them. but we want to phase them because we have a general overview of the costs, but we have not secured all funding, and we want to make sure that we start with one phase, one of these phases, and then move to the next phase and the next phase. And phase 2 might be a couple years out, and phase 3 might be 4 or 5, or we may be able to fund all of it in the next few years. It's a little hard to know right now, so that's why we're looking for your feedback on which do you think is most important to phase first. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A.
We'll give you 1 more minute. All right, 10 more seconds. All right, I'm gonna end the poll, and Linda's in here tallying up the responses from the people.
Brett Jones
So-
Memorial Park.
The timing over there, so.
I'm ready.
Memorial, you're dead already?
Yep. Put a stone there.
Saw that the most respondents said the accessible trail was the first priority, if I'm reading these right. And accessible trail was also the top second priority, so this is an interesting. Accessible trail, then observation tower, then seasonal parking and access road seems to be the numbers from the Zoom participants.
Same.
Same in here,
Yep,
yeah,
yep.
accessible trail, then observation tower, then seasonal parking.
Yep.
Excellent. All right.
Very definitive.
I see dollars.
Yeah, these all have
They all have
significant
dollar
dollar
signs,
signs.
yes.
All right, so
You would. That's what I do.
the last question is something we keep talking about this as the East Windham Conservation Project. So we just wanted to take a minute for those that are here to kind of give their feedback on kind of what names we might want to consider as we kind of finalize this project. You'll see kind of there's a list of suggestions here, but if you have any others, certainly you can vote for anything that you like. You can vote for all of them. You can vote for just one. If you have other suggestions, type them in the chat or write them on the open board. We will kind of be making some decision on this as we look to open the project. So we'll give you a few minutes to certainly think about it as much as you need, and we'll give you a few minutes. All right, we got about 10 more seconds, and then I'll share kind of this reading, and then maybe I'll read aloud some of the other typed in ones if someone wants to then pop back there and shout out to me what other ideas were written down here. That would be great. All right. Looks like the one person that hasn't voted, you have 3 seconds left. Okay. Thanks. I'm gonna end the poll. My little sheet here and share results. So it looks like the kind of 70% of the people online said Atherton Hill Preserve was their favorite of the list provided. I heard other suggestions of Western Mountains Lookout Trail, Windham Scenic Preserve. Windham Preserve, East Windham Preserve was next here, then Windham Preserve. Linda, you want to tell us what you see up there?
Yeah, we had 4 different people. The highest number of votes was for Atherton Hill Preserve.
Yeah, Atherton Hill was highest here as well.
Second was East Windham Preserve.
Yep.
Somebody voted East Windham Forest. Somebody voted Atherton Hill Recreational Preserve.
Yeah,
And
that's
somebody suggested the Wild Wonderful Windham Woods. So that was-
it's definitely it's hard to lock down on preserve, nature park, forest. They're all are definitely things that we're struggling with. So if you can bear with me for like 2 more minutes, we just wanted to kind of wrap up and tell you that we had questions about kind of like how do we get involved, and Rochelle kind of outlined. Rochelle outlined kind of the number of ways people get involved, but the next big milestone is town meeting on June 18th. So if you're a Windham resident, I hope you will be there, and to tell your friends to be there to support the bond funding to match our LMF grant so that we can actually
What
acquire
time is
properties
the
at
town?
10 a.m. at
So what?
until it's done, maybe 5 minutes, maybe, who knows? But you,
It's gotta be over by noon because Summerfest.
yeah, Summerfest is at noon, so stick around for Summerfest, but there'll be more information on both the town's website, and the land trust also has a website where they're kind of running the
We have-
private fundraising.
So it's
So
like we need to advertise more. Like, I have to be at a funeral in Massachusetts the 18th, but it seems like we should have a table at Summerfest encouraging.
yes,
people.
we absolutely will have information at Summerfest
Okay,
about
good.
this project. So
But by then it's too late to vote.
yeah, that's after voting, but I think if people are still
Yeah, people-
interested.
'cause
So
people still fundraising.
Rochelle, do you have any last words or?
Sure. Let's see. So we put up both the town and our land trust have project pages. And so you can get more information about the project. We are 9 months into this project, and we have, best case scenario, we're opening this in a little less than a year. So there's a lot more to happen in the next year. There's a lot more fundraising that needs to happen. There's a lot more engagement. There's a whole management plan. There was questions around folks wanting to volunteer. If you want to volunteer for this project, please reach out to our land trust. You can go right to our volunteer get involved page. There's a form you can fill out, and you can just make a note what type of volunteering you want to do. And if specifically you're interested in this project, just make a note on that. But we coordinate 150 plus volunteers. And if you're interested in supporting this project and or volunteering, please feel free to reach out to us.
Great. Thank you so much for coming in. It's 8:01, so we're right to time. Thank you. Thanks, Nick and Sylvia, if you're still around.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Bye.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you, guys.